I feel like the Republican Party has morphed ever since Trump was elected into the party of Trump.
He is running on three prongs. He's running on racism, he's running on misogyny, and he's running on anti-immigration.
Why is it still a coin flick election?
Because the American public has lost mind. Jesus Christ.
What do you mean by that? So just want to speak about the assassination attempt, because there was a second assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life.
I hated when Biden went on TV and he tried to apologize for that bullseye comment. That was unbelievable.
He has used incredibly aggressive, violent language. It's not the Democrats' fault that people are shooting at him.
So today I'm with Anthony Scaramucci, former head of communications for Donald Trump, and Destiny, political commentator and social media personality. So let's start off with how Trump is doing right now. It looks like he's doing some sort of crazy strategy, or maybe it's genius. If it is genius, it's really gone over most of our heads.
It's never genius. That's never the answer. Just to be clear, it's never genius. It's never, ever been the case.
Well, he's talking, just to go on with that, I mean, he's talking about immigrants eating cats and dogs. Instead of looking at using statistics, he's talking about immigrants eating cats and dogs, calling Joe Rogan, calling him names. Anthony, you work for him. What's happening right now?
Well, I mean, first of all, he goes to the alt-right when he's under stress. And so he was put under severe stress on September the 10th because he was not prepared for that debate. She came in very well prepared. She cleaned his clock. And so he goes to the alt-right. So when he was having a hard time after her nomination, the alt-right messaging on her was she turned black. She's not really black, but she turned black. And so the alt-right messaging is that immigrants are eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio, which is obviously totally not true and unfounded. And so he is running on three prongs. He's running on racism, he's running on misogyny, and he's running on anti-immigration. That's the three stools of his electoral platform. So all of that stuff feeds into that vortex, if you will. But, he's not the guy that he was. And so he could still win it. And this is something that should scare people because, she's done a good job. She's been organized. She's run a very disciplined campaign. But her messaging isn't totally clarified yet. We don't really know how she stands on the economy. He's 8 points ahead on the economy. Most white men, again, people can dislike me for saying this, but white men care about the economy. Women, they care about other issues, including reproductive rights and reproductive freedom. But the white men care about the economy. He's 8 points ahead of her on the economy. She's got to come up with a better narrative. And she's got the goods. I mean, they've delivered from a legislative perspective. They're reshoring manufacturing. They're building microprocessor factories. They bridge roads and tunnels that they put together on the Inflation Reduction Act is helping the economy, and wages are up. So she's got to get that story out there. But that's where we are. I mean, the guy's nuts, man. The guy's nuts. And he's nuttier now than he was in 2016. This is like part of his narcissism, and he's 78 versus 70. And he's also tired. His staff is telling people he doesn't want to do the work that he did 8 years ago.
But why would you go ultra-right when you're trying to appeal to independents? Because at the end of the day, it's a battle for the independents.
You're not trying to appeal to the independents. Neither side is trying to appeal to the independents. This is a get out the base election. So neither side gives a shit about the independents. They're just going to let those fall wherever they fall. She picks Waltz. Why does she pick Waltz? She's going for her base. He picks J.D. Vance. He's going for his base. So again, you could disagree with this, and I should let Destiny talk. I'm sorry, but you can disagree with what I'm saying, but that's what they're doing. They both sides have said this is a base election. Get out the vote, and look. I mean, if Steve Bannon wasn't in jail, he would have picked Rubio. The Vance pick was a disaster for him. Again, he could still win because it's very tight, but that was a really bad pick.
Destiny, what do you think? Why is he acting like this?
Firstly, Eli, Steven is a good name for me. Okay, I don't need to. My background is in pro gaming, so I started as Destiny, but that's what all my branding is. But I go by Steven for political stuff, or that's my birthday. Yeah. I agree with every single thing you said. I just thought it was funny. I feel like the Pence pick made a lot of sense because Donald Trump was a very unconventional candidate. He didn't really have a strong Republican foundation or background, and Pence is like literally, I think 538 said he was like the most conservative pick in like 40 years of vice presidential candidates, and he was just like a rock solid, married dude, governor of Indiana, like all this conservative background. So I feel like the Pence pick made sense. I feel like the Republican Party has morphed ever since Trump was elected into the party of Trump, to where 80% of these Republicans are, if Donald Trump was like, screw this, I'm running as an independent, they would follow him. It is insane. So that being said, I truly don't understand the JD Vance pick. He doesn't, I feel like
He was at a strong point when he chose Vance.
Yeah, but I just, the thing is, Vance comes off as he's like a typical politician, but a little bit worse, which just seems to be so contrary to what Donald Trump is, right? Like Donald Trump will go up and say, like Donald Trump's one of his biggest strengths, in my opinion, it's a little bit negatively framed, but I would say is his shamelessness. Trump will say 50 things that are just not true, and he doesn't care at all, and he'll steamroll through it. Meanwhile, Vance is like, well, when I said that about the cat women, and when I said this about that, I didn't really mean that, and like he's trying to explain his past, and he's like getting attacked all the time, and he just comes off as very like typical politician-ish. So I agree with everything. I agree with everything that was said about you want to turn your base out. That's way more. People always have this weird fixation. You got to bring the independents in and blah, blah. I was like, no, you got enough voters to win. You just got to get them to actually show up at the polls. That's generally the main goal. But man, that Vance pick, oh my goodness, I don't understand it. Yeah.
So why is it still a coin flick election?
Because the American public has lost their fucking mind. Jesus Christ.
What do you mean by that? What do you think? What, all the Trump voters? What do you mean?
I mean, it's a whole conversation, but I mean, my argument would be that conservatives over the past, I don't know, I'm 35. The conservatives over the past decades of my life have just like they've slowly moved in a direction. And I think with the Tea Party, it started where they started to veer off this kind of course of reality a lot. And liberals were just not able to respond well in that media environment. You get into this area where you get a conservative like Trump, or you get a Republican like Trump, who will do all of these crazy things. And after a while, you can't call it out because you're worried about conservatives calling you unhinged. So then they are more and more and more unhinged, but now you can't critique any of it. And then you're in this weird world where you can't bring up literally anything anymore because conservatives are making fun of you for it. Where when you look at the difference between the two sides, look at the debate performance that Biden had against Trump, right? That performance was so bad that all of the liberal media establishment called him out for it. The DNC people called him out for it. Pelosi and Obama called him out for it. And eventually Biden swapped, right? That's like how the Democratic Party functions. There's a lot of public feedback there. If Donald Trump were to have a bad debate performance where he's talking about how, on TV, he saw them eating the cats and the dogs or whatever other crazy stuff he said, every conservative is like, it's like the king has no clothes or whatever, right? Like everybody's like shivering in the corner. Like, I don't want to be the one to call out Trump. Like, I don't want to be the one to say this. I think he actually did great. I think I actually saw cats and dogs be eaten myself. Like this YouTube video, it's insane.
Anthony, what do you think? Because you said that the reason why it's still a coin flick election is because of Kamala's messaging isn't as clear.
Yeah. I mean, listen, well, first of all, Biden would have gotten killed by Trump. So the point that Stephen is making about the way the party works, I think is spot on. If they didn't remove Biden, and Biden didn't want to be removed, but if they didn't remove Biden, they would have lost the election. I mean, like really lost the election. So they got a shot now to win the election. I think she's running a good campaign. I think. And I'd love to get Stephen's reaction to this. There's 300,000 DNC and Kamala Harris volunteers, and there are 300 field offices now in the 7 swing states. Okay, comparatively, Trump has 50 offices. Some of them are local politicians that are Republicans that they're counting. He probably only has 25 field offices that are Trump presidential field offices, and he's got, according to him, 75,000 volunteers. Now, we don't know if he has 75,000 or not, but that's what he's saying. But let's just take it at face value. One party's got 300,000, 300 offices, and the other one's got 75,000 and 50 offices. And if this is a get out the vote election and it's 45 days, can we, can she win by doing that? Right now, again, last point, and turn it over to Stephen, but this guy Robinson, the black Nazi, I mean, you can't even make this shit up. Okay. But let's just call it what it is. He's a black Nazi. He's going to lose North Carolina. Is he going to drag Trump down with him? And let me just go over this demography because I think it's important. North Carolina is blacker and younger and more educated in terms of the percentage of people that have college degrees today than in 2016. So, he won North Carolina by about 100,000 votes last time in 2016. He lost it I think Biden won it by like 100,000 votes, but he's up in North Carolina right now. But he could end up losing North Carolina. Then take a look at the map. That map gets way more expansive. There are way more paths to 270 electoral votes for Vice President Harris. So, I don't know. It's a weird election. A lot of weird things have happened, and I'll make a prediction on your show. There'll be more weird things that happen that we'll be talking about towards the end of this thing.
I think that's an easy prediction to make.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the border. So, the Republicans have dubbed Kamala Harris, or mainly Trump has dubbed Kamala Harris as the border czar. She wasn't the border czar. She wasn't in charge of the border, but she was in charge of a part of helping with the border in terms of, I believe, it was looking at the root causes of Central American immigration. So it was taken a bit out of context. But at the same time, when Trump was in office, there were 2.5 million. There were 2.5 million. What do you call it? Encounters by the border, and with Biden in office, it's 10 million encounters by the border, and 2 million people came in illegally through Biden. Why is it? Can Kamala Harris properly fend off Trump's border attacks? Stephen, what do you think?
Here's what I'll say for anybody that wants to do it. Immigration is a little bit like macro econ. You have to have like not a fundamental. You need like a kind of a base understanding of everything that's at play before you even start to have the conversation, because people can do so many tricky things when you talk about border things. For instance, there's a difference between like an estimation of illegal crossings versus the border encounters. There's a difference between people coming into the country that are seeking asylum versus people that are coming through other means of like visas or other types of like illegal entries through ports of entry and everything, or in between ports of entry. When people are like quoting and throwing around these numbers of like X million, border encounters or X million or whatever, basically the goal is if you're the party who's trying to make it look as good as possible, you're quoting the numbers that are most favorable to you. And when you're the party that is on the attack, you're quoting the least favorable numbers. The border conversation, in my opinion, is so ridiculous because I feel like, the biggest talking point that I usually go to is there was a huge border bill that was authored by, I think it was Senator Lankford. Originally, it was his bill that was going to do, I would say, a lot in towards of shoring up a lot of the issues at the border right now, namely with asylum seeking. And one of the things that border bill did was it would have given a lot more money to judges. It would have given more money for staffing border security. And there was one provision, and it always gets weaponized by the Republicans. What that border bill would have done is it would have made it so that if if the daily encounter rate would have exceeded 5,000 people or over, I think, like a week time period, it would have given the federal government the authorization to shut down the border basically for some number of days until that number came down or until they wanted to reopen it basically for like a week or 2 weeks or something. The Republicans took that and they weaponized it and reverse engineered it. And they were saying, oh, this bill lets 5,000 illegals come into the country every day after Trump told them to shut it down. And then that became the only talking point about that bill. Like if you wanted the border fixed or worked on at all, that bill had broad bipartisan support until Donald Trump came in like a wrecking ball and said, actually, I'm going to need you to keep the border open because I still need to run on that as an election issue. So let's go ahead and shut down any legislation coming through here. When you're doing stuff like that, I can't take you seriously when you're talking about border issues. It reminds me of the Shane Gillis comedy skit where he's like, yeah, my dad's from Pennsylvania. He's a Trump voter. He's oddly obsessed with the border. And it's like, he lives in Pennsylvania. I don't believe it when these people say they care about the border or there's huge border problems. There was legislation to fix it. Trump shut it down. Nobody cared. I don't know.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, voters don't look at, maybe I'm wrong, Anthony, you'll tell me, but I think voters look at what did each president, what did they actually do, and not what they could have done and which was blocked. So in terms of, I mean, you look at it, even like at the border, how many incidents were there at the border? 2.5 million compared to 10 million. That's a huge difference. I mean, Anthony, I'd love to get your take on it.
So, it's interesting because I agree with everything you just said, Stephen. I think that the I mean, this is a terrible thing for me to say, but this is a very superficial way the American people think. It's low information voters that are going to decide the election. A lot of people, to Stephen's point, don't care about the border. But some of the people have like fear basis. If there's a crime committed, it turns out that the crime was committed by somebody that's in the country as an undocumented immigrant, or is in the country even as an immigrant that's here legally, that sought asylum. There's these sort of tricky things that are going on that create fear. I think she scored some points with her Mr. Trump wants to run on a problem as opposed to provide a solution. I think that has resonated. If you test that sentence that she put out at the debate, and you test her advertising that she's put out related to this, Trump, they were ready to sign a very restrictive, very tight, conservative written law. Biden was ready to pass it. They wouldn't sign it because Trump told them not to sign it. He wanted to make it an issue. Now, last point, this is a little ironic. There's a new president in Mexico, and she has helped our administration, meaning the U.S. administration, to reduce border crossings. So the border crossings are down in the last 6 months by about 40%. So again, all of that I just said is not really well known by the typical American voter. And so they're going to vote. To me, I think this is going to get decided on the economy. The economy is improving. Inflation is coming down. And if she spends the next 45 days, or I think it's like 41 days, she spends the next 41 days on this, it'll be very beneficial to her,
So do you think people care about the border as much as they care about the economy?
No, I think that the economy, it's still what James Carville said 30 years ago. It's the economy's stupid, and it's going to get decided on the economy. And there's pessimism. If you look at consumer confidence numbers, there's pessimism. But at the same time, the stock market's at an all-time high. Wages are at an all-time high. The manufacturing index, the best that it's been in 30 years. And so all of these things point to an economy that's, is recovering. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's my feeling. You know what I mean?
So I'm curious what you think about this. For a long time, even prior to Trump coming into office, I think there had been a little bit of research saying that people's opinions about the economy can be shaped by the media that they consume. And then over the past few years, there was a lady, Kyla Scranton, she coined this term called the vibe session, where in her perspective, a lot of people's feelings about the economy were being shaped by the media they consume, basically. And then there was that YouGov poll that came out that showed what do people feel about the economy. And as soon as Biden won and Trump lost, you saw the huge inversion of Democrats were all saying like, oh my God, the economy is really good now. And Republicans were saying it was terrible. I'm 35 now, and I'm old enough to where I see some Gen Z people.
It's totally true, by the way.
Yeah.
Same thing with the vaccine, by the way, Steve.
Oh, yeah, true. Yeah.
I'm not taking the vaccine. It's a Donald Trump vaccine. And then Biden wins. Okay, we're taking the vaccine.
Sure. Yeah. How much of how do you think it should be combated? If you're a candidate, you've got people who will say things, under Donald Trump, I was able to do X, Y, Z. The economy was so good. Housing was cheap before. Everything was so perfect. And now under, Biden, everything has gotten horrible. Even if what they're saying doesn't necessarily map onto reality, I feel like combating that as a politician is incredibly difficult. Because if you're a Democrat, you can't just say, well, actually things are good, because then you come off as being out of touch. But you can't say things are bad because, well, you were just in office for 4 years. What do you think is like the way that you address that? Or do you even agree that's a real problem, I guess?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I obviously am not a candidate and don't have a great answer, but I would say the following. If I were her, I would say I would try to make it I try to make it frankly what she's doing. She's trying to tell you that she's not a divisive person. She's trying to tell you that she's not going to impose regressive tariffs. I would have a comparative analysis going. I would say, listen, I'm for manufacturing. I'm for the restart of manufacturing and industrialization in the U.S., which leads to higher middle class wages. I'm for better bridges, roads, and tunnels, which reduces the cost of goods in transit in our society. And what I'm not for are regressive tariffs. And I think you have to explain to people because, people believe Trump. Trump says the tariffs are going to be paid by China, but they're not going to be paid by China. So you're hitting. And if John Deere moved some of their parts and equipment to Mexico, he wants to tariff them 200%. Okay. But what I would say if I was her, I would say, okay, listen, we've got to incentivize the John Deere Corporation to keep their manufacturing here in the United States. We're in a competitive global market now. And the Biden administration has provided that. There's a $250 billion bill that was signed in the first year of the Biden term that gives tax incentives to these companies to build their manufacturing here in the U.S. And she's got to position that. She's got to say, listen, he's going to tax you and going to crush you. And everything he's talking about is inflationary. And if you don't believe me, go by the Goldman Sachs objective economists that rated our two economic plans. Or there are 400 economists that just came out and supported her. And why are they supporting her? Because she's offering common sense ideas about what to do with the economy. He's not. And again, I don't know. It's my opinion, I guess, more than anything else. But I think her plan is way more practical and a way better plan for the U.S. than his plan.
And you think if she just messages it better, communicates it better?
Yeah, she's got to messenger it a bit better. She's only look they're ahead of her 5-1 on interviews. But some of their interviews are net negatives, right? Because they're talking about dogs getting eaten and all kinds of crazy shit. But she's got to get out there and speak more, I think. She's going to do an interview. She's going to do an interview tonight with Stephanie. And she's going to do an interview with 60 Minutes, I think, over the weekend. And so she needs more interviews,
I mean, she hasn't been doing many interviews. But yeah.
What's that?
She hasn't been doing many interviews.
No, she hasn't. I think it's an issue.
Yeah.
But I mean, here's the thing, though. I mean, he doesn't talk right. He talks like a nut. So he gets a buy. He gets a buy on everything he says.
It absolutely does.
He's judged as a normal human being.
It drives me.
And then the
it drives me so crazy.
Right.
Yeah, it drives me so crazy because I'll see people read off like Kamala Harris statements like they don't make sense. Like I understand what's being said here. Like it might be a little bit sloppy, and then you see how Trump answered that. I mean, it's a legendary Trump answer when he was at that. He gave that speech in that economic forum or whatever, and they asked him, "What are you going to do? What policy?" I think they said, "What specific policy will you do to alleviate childhood poverty?" That was one of the most insane 2.5-minute like rambles I've ever seen in my entire life. Like that's a campaign ending ramble for Joe Biden. It would be a huge, punch in the gut to Kamala Harris, but Trump he just moonwalks away from it with absolutely no problem.
So I mean, you talk about word salads. Okay, Trump is spewing out word salads. Okay, man, you're almost getting like a 50% discount at the Trump word salad buffet because it's so nonsensical, But let me just say this too. I mean, he is having a going out of business sale right now. So what the hell do I mean about that? He's selling NFTs of his shirts and his
gold coin. Gold coin was recent.
He's at the coin. He's got the gold coin. He's got the Bible. He's got his wife is selling some kind of pendant that's worth $60 for $600. It's almost like they're like, okay, this could be it. This could be our last hoorah with taking money from rubes. So they're literally having a going out of business sale. And by the way, everything they're selling, it says there in the tight language at the bottom, none of it's going to the campaign. It's going into the pockets of the Trump family. I mean, it's an insane thing. If you said to me a presidential candidate for one of the two parties is going to drop a meme coin 6 weeks before an election, and they're going to sell pieces of their business suit, and they're going to sell Bibles, I don't know. I probably would have said, I don't think that's going to happen in the United States. The country that I grew up in is probably going to be a little bit more serious than that,
Yeah,
I didn't think that was going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know that for the NFT stuff and for the for all the weird stuff he's selling. None that it specifies. None of that is going to the campaign. It's just for Trump himself.
None of it's going to the campaign. No, that's
Okay.
that's going to, yeah. I mean, that's going to his personal pocket, and his wife's obviously coming out with a book now, and she's got this pendant that she's selling, and he's selling NFTs, and he's selling meme coins with his son. I mean, it's embarrassing,
Yeah.
And then you have the DJT stock, which any securities analyst would tell you is worthless. It's got little to no revenues. It's absolutely worthless if he loses the election because it has no platform. He's tweeting on Twitter, or what's now known as X now. You know what I mean?
That platform had the financials. I think that they made their revenue. So the total amount of money in per quarter is like less than $1 million.
Yeah,
insane,
no, exactly.
Unbelievable.
600,000 a quarter. So they're making 2.4 million in revenues. It's got a $3 billion market cap. I mean, come on, it doesn't make sense, But I mean, again, this is also a way to avoid and get yourself around some of the campaign finance rules, right?
Yeah, I want to move on to the last question because we've got a couple of minutes left. But just before I do, about the word salad, it's interesting when Republicans, like you said, Republicans make fun of how Kamala Harris speaks. You've got no leg to stand on, as we say. So just want to speak about the assassination attempt because there was a second assassination attempt on Donald Trump's life recently. Anthony, I want to start with you on this one. Trump and the Republican Party has been blaming the Democrats for this. They're saying they're using very harsh language. They're calling him a dictator. They're calling him they're going to ruin the country. That's the language that a lot of times they're using. Of course, Trump has also used similar language, if not worse, to her and to the party. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, a couple things just briefly. I mean, number one, he has used incredibly aggressive, violent language, starting with the January 6th insurrection. And he's also said if he loses this election, there'll be a bloodbath. So
didn't he say a bloodbath about the automobile industry?
Say again?
Didn't he say a bloodbath about the automobile industry? It wasn't just a bloodbath generally.
Well, no, you see, that's what he does. Okay, so let's explain that. That's a brilliant thing that you're saying, Eli. So what he does is he'll say something outrageous, and then he'll say, I meant in the automobile industry. So now there's something for both sides. He'll say that he's for the abortion law, the reproductive rights in Florida, and then a day later he'll say, no, I'm against it. Or he'll say, there are very fine people on both sides during a white supremacist rally in Charlottesville, and then a day later he says, I denounce it. And so now there's two things that he said, and so now his detractors can say, well, he said this, and his advocates can say, no, he said that. That's him. He does that every day. Somebody will write this down 50 years from now as a presidential candidate. Nobody said more contradictory things simultaneously and got away with it, And I tease people because if you're a student of astrology, he's a Gemini, which means he's a twin. There are two people inside one body, and for some reason, he gets away with literally being Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde simultaneously. I don't even know how he does it, but you couldn't get away with that, Stephen. No way could get away with that, but he gets away with it. So yeah, he'll say, no, I only meant that about the automobile industry, but no, he's inciting violence. But here's the thing, okay? It's not the Democrats' fault that people are shooting at him. You do have assassination teams that have been put together by the Iranians. He killed Soleimani. They have a fatwa on his life, and he deserves, whether you like him or not, he deserves full presidential Secret Service protection. He's a former president, and he's one of the two nominated candidates for the presidency. And I like the fact that that was a bipartisan commitment. I don't know if you guys noticed that when they voted on that, there were no votes. Every single Democrat and every single Republican voted for that. He needs that level of protection, but it's really foreign adversaries that are causing that threat more than anything else that's going on in the U.S.
Stephen, what do you think?
I mean, I think I'd like to agree with everything that was said. One of the frustrating things, this happens a lot, actually, it's funny in the YouTuber streamer world. Like if you're at a level to where you've accrued a decent amount of fans, you know, when you say certain things, you know the impact that it has on your fan base. And one of the most frustrating things when you're dealing with another large content creator is they play stupid sometimes, right? A guy will come on and he'll say something like, like, Eli, all right, am I really going to trust this guy on foreign policy? You see what he wears on his head, right? They'll say some shit like that. The whole chat, will be spamming, all these horrible things about Jewish people. And then when you confront me later on it, you're like, Steven, when you said that, like, what the fuck, dude? And then I go, what? I was just making like a joke or whatever, like, I don't know. Sometimes you've got like crazy hats on, right? I play stupid. And I don't know how Republicans got this media environment where they can do anything and then play stupid and act like they have no idea what's going on, right? When Donald Trump made that comment about the Proud Boys, he said, stand back and stand by, right? You could go on Gab. No, I think it was Parler. You could see what Stuart Rhodes and you could see what Enrique Tarrio said when Donald Trump said that. Heard you loud and clear, sir. Heard you loud and fucking clear. Two guys, by the way, who organized massive groups of people. The Proud Boys were the first people that broke through the barricades and then broke into the Capitol building, right? These people were there. They heard Trump. They made it publicly known that they heard Trump, exactly what he said. And then when you confront Trump on it or you confront Republicans on it, they go, well, I don't know. I disavowed them. I don't know what's going on. But the reason why, and it's so important to know this, okay? That's why I call all these motherfuckers out now, okay? It's so important to say this. They know that it's bullshit. Because as soon as it's on the other side, right, after that Trump assassination attempt, what were they all saying, right? Well, remember in that private donor meeting when Biden said that he was going to put Trump in the bullseye? Well, what about that? Isn't that Trump? Biden, listen, I love Biden. I love Joe Biden, okay? I love him. I would have voted for him. I don't care, all right? I hated when Biden went on TV and he tried to apologize for that bullseye comment. That was unbelievable that any media would try to hold him accountable for that after everything that the Republican Party has been involved in over the past decade. Yeah, Jesus. But
no, you're right about it. You're right. Guys, I got to go, unfortunately. I got this 11 o'clock, which is live TV.
Oh, good luck.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for the talk.